everyone, and thanks for joining us again
for this week's episode of Tallawah, the podcast that features Jamaicans locally and abroad who are innovating and dominating in their journey to success. Most importantly, they are doing so based on their own definition of success. This week, we have with us Nicholas Key, serial entrepreneur extraordinaire, who is manifesting success one code at a time. I am your host, Yanique Taylor. To start, Nicholas is a 2017 Prime Minister's Youth Award for Entrepreneurship recipient and the 2016 Queen's Young Leaders Runner-Up Award recipient. Welcome, Nicholas. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, wonderful. So, already we have heard, I think, in that brief introduction that you have achieved so much. And just give us some background as to what has led you to receive 2 premier awards locally and some of the work you've been doing, not just here actually, but also outside of Jamaica.
Yeah, so more directly, those 2 awards in particular, they are coming from my work with my own organization, my nonprofit called Next Gen Creators, where we essentially promote tech and tech entrepreneurship and in tech in just every single industry throughout Jamaica and by extension the Caribbean. And so me receiving that award was, I guess, society or like the bigger heads at large acknowledging the social work that I've been doing for youth in terms of uplifting them and providing them with skills to enable them to become more economically, I guess, viable in the market.
So usually when we hear about coding, I don't think anybody is thinking in terms of economic development and all of these areas that you are really trying to focus coding around. What really got you on this path?
So I started coding at 12, and that was just an accident. I was bored.
Accidental coding, really?
Yeah. So
explain.
Accidental coding. So I used to play a lot of video games.
Okay.
And I had finished my last video game and I couldn't really afford to buy any more video games. And my father wasn't going to buy me anymore, so he just told me to like make a game. And so I was like, okay, I kind of figured things out from there. I just found out what I needed to do to make the game, and apparently it happened to be programming. So I like borrowed a programming book, a very basic programming book, and then from there I tinkered with some code, and then I created my own like game. It wasn't anything big. It was like a true and false randomizer, and then from there, that's how like I got into the space, and just I got better and better at it, and that kind of just led me into wanting to help other people to get more into the space as well.
So daddy basically told you, you know what, I'm not buying any more video games, make your own, and literally you went and made your own game.
Yeah, I just followed instructions. It wasn't
You are every parent's dream child.
I don't know about that, but
Anyway, okay, so we know you're now at this area where, okay, you've read a book, dabbled in creating a game, you've discovered coding. What was next after that?
Working remotely, working as a freelance developer for the internet. People who
So did you have any formal training?
no, none at all, even to this day. And so, like, I started probably working at about 13, and I was able to, fund a few things, fund some of like my side projects at that time, and delve into creating different projects on the side as well, and that kind of just continued up till about maybe 17ish, about 16 going on to 17, and then that's when I got bored and I gave programming a break, and then I went into like the entrepreneurial road, and I guess I just started with junior achievement coincidentally. But yeah, and then after that entire saga, I just got back into coding again. But on the end of the spectrum of kind of helping to train other people to learn the same skills that I wants new, or rather still new.
Okay, so starting or venturing out into the work world, even though you were freelancing at 13, what was your thought process at that point in terms of what your expectations looked like for your future? Did you expect that you would remain freelancing? Were your parents pushing you to do something else? Because I'm assuming you were still in school, you were doing pretty well. So where were you seeing your future heading?
Yeah, I guess with regards to my parents, they don't really know much about what I do, even now. It's not, and I think if you, like, even back then, just the idea of creating your own software was very abstract to them,
Sure.
and even to a lot of people. And so whenever they saw me on like the computer, they just assumed that I was playing games. Like even to this day, until like I started making like real money, and they were like, oh, this is how people make money now on the internet. They stay on the computer for hours, and something happens, and then money is
Money gets
deposited.
exchanged. Yep, yep.
And so, yeah, I guess on that end, that has been like my relationship between my parents and them understanding, like, I guess my prospects of the future. And so they didn't really guide me in that way. Of course, like in the beginning, I had high hopes, not just me, but my mother had high hopes of me becoming like a cardiologist. And that was like the 12-year-old dream. And then by about 16, I was just like, no, I kind of want to do something else, because medicine and then the blood, I didn't really understand what cardiology was at the time. And I was like, oh, it's a heart. It's like, so, that kind of led me into pivoting into something else. And so I kind of just went my own path.
Okay, and so on this path now, what are some of the things you are striving to accomplish? So you have Next Gen Creators, that's your company that you run, and I know you have several other things that you have consulted on, other things that you have in the works. Tell us a bit about those things and how they're all tying in to where you're heading.
I guess I'll give the long answer, the long Miss Universe answer, and then zero in on my
Mr. Universe, man. Mr. Universe.
Mr. Universe answer. But I guess in general, I've always cared about just people being able to just be independent in their own right, and being able to contribute to society in ways where they can provide certain services for others. And I'm really into the idea of utopia and us living harmoniously in like peace and all that jazz. It really like is me at a core. But I guess on the flip side, if I'm being honest, I kind of just wanted other people to understand not just the space, not just the tech space, but me. And I guess I just wanted more friends to relate to, who understood tech, who understood what it meant to be creative in the space, what innovation meant, and who was just interested in like creating things without the expectations of it's like society and the whole getting a job thing, but was just more about pure and honest creativity and drive to just do things that made sense to them and that they were passionate about.
Sure.
But yeah, so I think that's my answer.
Okay. No, but that says a lot, because it explains why Next Gen is a non-profit versus being, because it could easily be a profit-making enterprise for you.
So that was the thinking originally. So I came back to Jamaica, and then I was like, okay, how am I going to create the same experiences that I had overseas, back home, in my homeland, and by extension the region? And so I was doing a whole lot of digging, and I found out that the entire startup and tech ecosystem was extremely fragile. I mean, it still is, but not as bad as when we started, and it just didn't make sense for us to delve into the whole the for-profit mindset of getting people to pay thousands of US dollars for us to train them how to code, because anything within the space is expensive. Like for instance, to train one person at like a US or even European boot camp or any other country who's like invested in the tech space is about maybe 10 to 20,000 US for just one person. And there's no way we would ever be able to charge anybody out here for that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's why we delve into that road.
Okay. And so tell us a bit about some of the initiatives that have been an outgrowth of Next Gen and what other opportunities that has produced.
Yeah, so since we started, to give context, we essentially do a lot of events and host a lot of programs and initiatives that are geared towards exposing people to the tech space and the tech industry. So by way of like hosting hackathons, which are like 48-hour coding events where people come together in like groups of 4, they team up and they create something from scratch, and then they present it at the end for prizes and just to present it for presenting sake and to contribute to the open source community. We also host like code days, which are similar to hackathons in that there's still like this long overdrawn event, but the code days are about 12 hours or less. We also do a lot of coding workshops whenever we can, and originally we hosted them monthly. Now we're hosting them like whenever we get funding for them specifically. But that should start up again soon with the monthly thing. And aside from that, we host startup summits, which are the piece to expose not just the direct, I guess, recipients of who we're trying to serve, but the general public on like what's happening in the space and how we can bridge the gap between tech and like what we're familiar with. So for instance, last year we hosted our Convert Summit, which is themed around culture and tech, and we find different initiatives and bring them to the forefront, and we bring together like programmers and extreme artists, and we have them create different like augmented reality stuff or virtual reality pieces, and they showcase it at this event, and people just become inspired. Yeah, so that's what we've been like doing so far, and I guess over the 4 years it's amassed like a community of like hundreds, close to probably 1,000 at this point. And going forward, we hope to amass even more when we become like more systematic and churn out talent at a rate that is competitive with the international space.
Okay, awesome. That sounds wonderful. And so what are some of the other outcomes or other opportunities that have come to life from Next Gen and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so I can give some, I guess, anecdotal examples of some of the community members who have either passed through the space or have like been with us from the beginning. A few of them have either gone on, started maybe at like our first hackathon, and they've come to a few workshops and like more or less gone off to work at like Google or Twitter or Amazon, or even NCB and a few of our like local sponsors. A few of them have started companies. A few of them have decided to stay in the pure developer space, the open source space, and create projects for themselves. For instance, I know a team from our first hackathon that created like an application for a smartwatch to help the visually impaired, so that they wouldn't have to rely on the canes for support anymore. So they just rely on their watch, and it would provide haptic feedback in the form of vibrations, and so that would guide them along the path to avoid obstacles and so forth.
That's wonderful. So that's a perfect example, because it really shows the breadth of opportunity that can be created through coding.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people are aware of that.
Yeah. So we really try to push the social impact piece first. Mainly because there are a whole lot of issues in Jamaica, and it's hard for people to it's harder for people to relate to anything that is abstract when they're experiencing things in real time, and they like experience different events that are relatable to them.
And so, what are some of the other things that you have done outside of Next Gen?
Outside of Next Gen, so prior to Next Gen, prior to me just getting back to Jamaica, I started 3 different startups at different stages of my life. And so the first one was in like 3D and 4D printing, and actually that idea kind of stemmed from high school, when I had like a junior achievement company, and it was called Pastato, and that more or less turned into me re-engineering the product and turning it into like an organic resin, which is a raw material for 3D and 4D printers. So we turn it into the resin, which would be biodegradable, and it was just environmentally friendly for everyone. And
Right.
my co-founder created his own printers, and it seemed like perfect merger. And so that was the first one.
So you mentioned Junior Achievement before. So tell us a bit more about what that experience was.
Yeah, that was my foot in. That gave me the confidence to really step out. I think even to this day, I'm just like thankful of like having to go through that entire experience of understanding how to relate to different team members and work together as a unit and create things from scratch and create things that seem extremely abstract, and then taking them back down to earth and making it a reality. And so one of the companies that I ran or was a part of and ran through high school was a junior achievement company called Pastato. And we essentially created different knickknacks and accessories made from plastic that was biodegradable, which was made from potatoes. Just potato starch alone. Potato starch and some other ingredients that we just made in the lab and experimented with. And so that kind of leapfrogged me into thinking outside of the scope of, I guess, of Jamaica, and just thinking more about other real world ideas and how I could like contribute to society. And that more or less led to me starting that first startup in the US. And so that when I liquidated that startup, I went off and I did some traveling to more or less try to explore like other ecosystems, other startup and tech ecosystems. So I essentially went all over Latin America, and I did like a small side project where I was connecting different tech startups with like eccentric events, and so that kind of allowed me to live for about 6-ish months. And after that, I went back to Silicon Valley and started another company, this time in big data, specifically for insurance companies. And so we analyze like eccentric features about like properties and provide the analysis to the companies so that they could provide competitive rates and for premiums for the customers.
Oh wow! Okay.
And so that ran for a few months, and then my co-founder and I decided to leave, and then go back to our respective countries. So I went back to Jamaica, he went back to India, and so that's where Next Gen more or less was started from there.
Okay. Wow. So when you created that video game at 12, 13, did you ever think that it would have led to any of this that you have just shared?
No, I had an idea. Of where it might have led to. I like the idea of planning, and so in my head I was like, okay, maybe if I create a good enough game, I can like sell it to some major corporation. That kind of came true in some respects, but not really. And so, I mean, just the entire journey has more or less been me just winging it, because I didn't really know what was
Sure.
going on in the space. I still don't know to some extent.
Sure.
And so even now, I'm kind of just exploring the ecosystem, not just regionally in the Caribbean, but all over the world, to see where I can make the next landfall, or how I can be more impactful, or how I can like influence different markets and movements.
So what would you, what kind of encouragement or direction would you offer to anyone who is interested in anything that you have shared, whether it's the coding aspect, whether it's being a serial entrepreneur? What would be some of your words of encouragement in terms of starting down that path?
I guess my blind and immature answer would be to stop listening to your parents.
Anything but that. We can't tell people to listen to their parents, especially your younger listeners.
Yes,
you still have to listen to your parents.
but that's for sure not advisable. But I would say, be patient, especially now in the age of, I guess, a massive internet movement where things seem to be running out of time. Just be patient with yourself. Be curious about everything and anything that seems interesting enough for them to really invest their time in. And so for me, that was coding. For somebody else, it could very well much be video games. Because even now people are earning millions from
Absolutely
playing online and having people watch that as like a form of entertainment. But the world is an oyster at this point. There's so many opportunities that we haven't even heard about as yet, because of the internet and what it represents now, especially now, where a lot of I guess archaic jobs are disappearing and more new ones are appearing in forms that we would never have imagined 10 or 15 years ago. And so I guess my best advice is to just find something, stick to it for a while. If it resonates with you, keep going. If it doesn't, move on to something else that piques their curiosity and just stick with it for a while. If it just an agile process of just keep going and going until something sticks. And
I think something else that you have really portrayed in your various experiences to date, even starting with your first company when you came up with Plastato and coming up with a biodegradable product, is that really no idea is a bad idea because you don't know where it will take you.
Exactly.
You just don't know.
Precisely.
So
honestly,
go for it.
Like Plastato led me along the lines of thinking outside, I guess more, I think at the time when Plastato was just in the idea phase, I was like delving into the development of countries. So I was looking into like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and that like kind of led into one goal in particular related to the environment, and so that kind of piqued my interest in the environment, and that just led me down a whole path of experimentation with just looking into different products and creating things related to the environment, and wanted to contribute in that way, at least at that phase.
Sure.
And allowing me to grab onto different networks within that space, and the same is for like anything that I've delved into.
Okay, awesome. Well, I would love to continue this interview. There is so much more I know that you have to share, but we will end here. I thank you for taking the time. We're sitting here outside this wonderful cafe, enjoying the evening breeze, because this was our only opportunity to get connected. It's been a while, and I know you're gearing up for even more travel in the coming weeks. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share the wonderful things that you have been doing, and I know there are many more great things coming along. We thank you, our listeners, for joining us once again, and we invite you to stay tuned for our next episode. You will hear us next week on the next episode of Tallawah. Thank you for joining us.